Her billionaire CEO husband planned to leave her for his mistress, until her silent revenge destroyed his empire. You haven't worked in 5 years, Viv. Your skills are outdated. The industry moved on without you. I'm offering you security. Don't let pride make you homeless. Vivian Reeves sat across from her husband in their Seattle penthouse, his words landing like physical blows. The man she'd built a life with, the man she'd sacrificed everything for, was telling her she was nothing without him. Pride? That's what you think this is? Have you ever been so underestimated by someone that when you finally showed them who you really were, their entire world collapsed? 6 months ago, I had nothing. Today, I'm about to become the most feared woman in Silicon Valley. And my husband? He's about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. But let me take you back to where it all started. The moment I discovered the man I loved had already replaced me. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, you need to hear what happened next. Hit that subscribe button and tell me where you are watching from in the comment. Because this story will remind you exactly how powerful you really are. What else would you call it? Dominic Cross leaned back in his leather chair, the city lights of Seattle glittering behind him like a crown. You're upset. I understand. But be practical. You walk away from this marriage. You walk away with almost nothing. The prenup is ironclad. You get $50,000 and 30 days to vacate. Then what? You think you're going to compete in the tech world after half a decade away? You think anyone's going to hire a software architect whose last line of code was written when Obama was still president? She stared at him, this stranger wearing her husband's face. When did you become this person? I've always been this person. You just chose not to see it because the lifestyle was too comfortable. He checked his watch, dismissing her pain with the same gesture he used to end conference calls. Nicole understands the pressure I'm under. She lives in my world. She gets it in ways you stopped trying to understand years ago. Nicole, his vice president of strategic partnerships. The woman Vivian had welcomed into their home dozens of times. The woman who was now sleeping with her husband and planning a future that erased Vivian completely. 6 months later, Vivian sat in a different room, a lawyer's office in downtown Seattle. Rain streaked the windows. Her hands rested on a stack of legal documents that would detonate her ex-husband's billion-dollar empire like a controlled demolition. Mrs. Cross, the attorney asked, his voice careful and measured, are you absolutely certain you want to proceed with this? Once we file, there's no going back. This will be very public, very messy, and Mr. Cross will fight back with everything he has. Vivian looked down at the papers. Patent infringement lawsuit, $500 million in damages. Injunction against Cross-Tech Industries from using the AI architecture that powered every single one of their products. The architecture she had created, the intellectual property she owned, the foundation Dominic had built his empire on, while telling her she contributed nothing of value. She picked up the pen. He told me I couldn't survive without him. She signed the first page. He told me I was outdated, irrelevant, forgettable. She signed the second page. He told me that walking away would make me homeless. She signed the third page, her signature sharp and decisive. I want him to understand exactly how expensive it is to underestimate someone. The lawyer nodded and gathered the documents. These will be filed within the hour. By tomorrow morning, every tech blog and financial news outlet will be covering this. His stock price will crater. His board will panic. His investors will demand answers. Are you prepared for that? For the first time in 6 months, Vivian smiled. A real smile. Not the performance she'd perfected as Mrs. Dominic Cross, but something genuine and fierce. I've never been more prepared for anything in my life. Have you ever been so underestimated by someone that, when you finally showed them who you really were, their entire world collapsed? Have you ever had someone tell you that you were nothing, only to prove that you were everything? If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, you need to hear what happened next. Because this story will remind you exactly how powerful you really are. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to tell you will restore your faith in the power of choosing yourself. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever walked away from someone who said you'd never survive without them? I read every single one. Now let me take you back to where this all started. Back to the woman Vivian used to be, before she disappeared into someone else's shadow. 5 years earlier, Vivian Reeves stood on stage at the MIT Technology Conference presenting her breakthrough AI algorithm to a room full of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley. She was 27 years old, brilliant, and absolutely certain of her value. Her presentation on adaptive neural networks had people leaning forward in their seats, frantically taking notes, already imagining how her work could revolutionize everything from healthcare diagnostics to financial modeling. In the third row sat Dominic Cross, 33 years old, already successful, already wealthy from his first tech startup acquisition. He watched her with the kind of focus that made her skin warm. After her presentation, he waited until the crowd around her thinned, then approached with a confidence that felt magnetic rather than arrogant. That was extraordinary. He extended his hand. "I'm Dominic Cross. I've been working in AI applications for 3 years, and what you just presented is at least 5 years ahead of anything else I've seen. Have you thought about commercial applications?" She shook his hand, matching his firm grip. "Vivian Reeves. And yes, I've thought about it. I'm fielding offers from several companies right now. Forget the offers. Build something with me. Partner with me. We could create something that changes everything." That conversation led to coffee, which led to dinner, which led to late nights in his office refining her algorithms and building the architecture for what would become cross-tech industries. Somewhere between the code reviews and the business plan revisions, they fell in love. Or what she thought was love. He was attentive then, fascinated by her mind. He asked questions about her work, her process, her vision for how AI could solve real-world problems. He made her feel seen in ways she'd never experienced before. "Marry me," he proposed 6 months later in the Botanical Gardens, her favorite place in the city. "I don't want to build this empire with anyone else. I don't want to build a life with anyone else. You're the most remarkable person I've ever met." She said yes. She wore a vintage lace dress. They got married in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Her father, a patent attorney, pulled her aside before she walked down the aisle. "Sweetheart, I need you to do something for me. Protect your intellectual property. Those algorithms you developed, that architecture, make sure it's registered in your name before you start contributing to his company. Just as a precaution. Dad, I'm marrying him, not entering a hostile negotiation. I trust him." Her father squeezed her hand, his expression worried but resigned. "Just promise me you'll think about it. I promise." She never thought about it. She was too happy, too in love, too busy building their life together, and that choice would haunt her. The first year of marriage was a blur of 18-hour days building cross-tech from a concept into a viable company. Vivian contributed her AI architecture, her code, her expertise. She sat in on investor pitches, technical reviews, product development meetings. She was a partner in every sense of the word, except legally, except officially. The company was registered in Dominic's name. The patents they filed listed him as primary inventor. When reporters wrote about Crosstech's innovative AI technology, they quoted Dominic. Vivian was mentioned occasionally as the supportive wife who understood the technical side. It happened so gradually, she didn't notice the shift. Dominic started taking meetings without her, started making decisions without consulting her, started explaining her own algorithms to investors as if they were his insights. When she pushed back, his responses were always reasonable. Investors want to see a clear leadership structure. You understand that, right? It's better if I'm the face of the company, less confusing. You're better with the product side. Let me handle the business development. That's not really your strength anyway. I didn't realize you wanted to come to that conference. I thought you'd prefer to stay home and rest. You've been working so hard. Each small accommodation felt reasonable in isolation, but they accumulated like sediment, layer after layer, until she was buried under the weight of compromises she hadn't consciously agreed to make. By their 3rd anniversary, Vivian had stopped attending company meetings altogether. She managed their home, their social calendar, their public image. She planned charity galas and networking dinners. She smiled for photographs and made small talk with investors' wives. She became Mrs. Dominic Cross, and somewhere in that transformation, Vivian Reeves disappeared completely. Her old laptop sat in the back of their closet, untouched. Her MIT alumni network stopped inviting her to events after she declined too many times. Former colleagues sent occasional emails asking if she was still in the field. She always meant to respond. She never did. Their penthouse overlooked Puget Sound, all floor-to-ceiling windows and custom furniture that cost more than most people's cars. She had everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. She felt like a ghost haunting her own life. Every morning she woke up in their king-sized bed and looked at the ceiling and wondered when she'd agreed to become this person. When had she traded her dreams for his? When had her intelligence become something to downplay rather than celebrate? Dominic never asked about her work anymore. Never asked if she missed coding, missed solving problems, missed being someone whose contributions were valued. He assumed she was happy because she was comfortable, and she let him assume it because confronting the alternative felt too enormous, too devastating. Until the day she discovered she wasn't the only woman in his life. It was a Tuesday morning in early March. Seattle rain hammered against the windows. Vivian's laptop had crashed the night before, some catastrophic hard drive failure. That lost nothing important because she hadn't created anything important in years. She needed to check her email, confirm the caterer for the charity gala that weekend, the kind of task that filled her days now. She went into Dominic's home office, a space she rarely entered anymore. It was his domain, all dark wood and leather, and the faint smell of his cologne. His computer was unlocked, still logged in from whenever he'd worked late the night before. She opened the browser intending to access her email, but his iCloud was synced across devices and a notification popped up, message from NS. The preview showed on screen before she could look away. When are you finally leaving her? I'm tired of being your secret. You promised me after the IPO. Vivian's hand froze on the mouse. The world narrowed to that single sentence. She clicked the notification. The Messages app opened. Months of conversations unfurled before her eyes, like a map of her own erasure. NS was Nicole Sterling, his vice president, the woman who'd been to their home for dinner at least 20 times, the woman who'd congratulated Vivian on her event planning skills, who'd complimented her dress, who'd smiled across the table while sleeping with her husband. Vivian scrolled through the messages, each one a small violence, photos she didn't want to see, plans made for a future that didn't include her, discussions of trips they'd taken while Dominic told Vivian he was at conferences, intimate conversations that revealed a version of her husband she didn't recognize, someone warmer, more attentive, more present than he'd been with her in years. Then she found the one that made her stomach drop. Nicole had written, "What if she fights the divorce? What if she asks for more than the prenup allows?" Dominic's response was casual, dismissive, devastating in its certainty. She won't fight. Vivian's practical above all else. Once she realizes fighting means losing the lifestyle she's built her entire identity around, she'll take the settlement and disappear quietly. Women like her always do. Pride matters until it costs something real. Then it becomes negotiable very quickly. Women like her. As if he knew her. As if he understood anything about who she was beneath the performance she'd been giving for 3 years. Vivian sat back in his desk chair, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The rain continued its assault on the windows. The city stretched out below, indifferent to her devastation. She thought about confronting him immediately, screaming, throwing things, demanding explanations that wouldn't change anything. Instead, she opened his calendar, found the appointment scheduled for Friday afternoon. Howell and Associates, Family Law, 90 minutes blocked off. The consultation where he'd finalize his strategy to divorce her and move on to his next chapter. She checked the date. 3 days away. He was going to blindside her, wait until after she'd planned his charity gala, smiled for the cameras, played the perfect wife one last time. Then he'd sit her down and explain that he was in love with someone else, that she'd be taken care of financially, that this was for the best. Vivian looked around his office at the awards and accolades, the framed magazine covers featuring his face, the physical evidence of success built on her architecture, her code, her algorithms. Success he'd convinced the world was his alone. She opened his file system, found a folder labeled Legal Documents. Inside were drafted divorce papers, her name already filled in. The settlement amount, $50,000, exactly what the prenup specified. A timeline for her to vacate the property, 30 days. There was also an email exchange with his attorney discussing community property. The attorney had asked specifically about Vivian's contributions to Cross-Tech's early development. Dominic's response was dismissive. She helped in the beginning, but nothing that rises to the level of ownership stake. Her contributions were minimal, more like an enthusiastic assistant than a true partner. The IP is mine. Vivian's vision blurred with tears that she refused to let fall. Not yet. She had 3 days before he planned to destroy her life. 3 days to decide who she wanted to be when everything fell apart. She cleared the browser history, closed all the windows, left his office exactly as she'd found it. Then she went to their bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed she'd shared with a stranger. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dominic. Running late tonight. Don't wait up. Dinner meeting with potential investors. She knew it was a lie. Knew he was with Nicole. Knew every late night, every business trip, every moment of distance had been building toward this planned ending where she was the only one surprised. Vivian looked at her reflection in the full-length mirror across from their bed. 32 years old. Beautiful in ways magazines photographed. Empty in ways that had nothing to do with him, and everything to do with the choices she'd made to accommodate him. When had she stopped being Vivian Reeves, the software architect who'd commanded rooms full of brilliant minds? When had she become Mrs. Dominic Cross, whose greatest accomplishment was selecting the right caterer? The answer was obvious. Gradually, then suddenly, one small choice at a time until she'd traded herself for a life that looked perfect from the outside and felt like death from the inside. Her father had tried to warn her. Protect your intellectual property. Make sure your contributions are documented, registered, protected. She'd ignored him because she'd thought love meant trust meant not. Protecting yourself from the person you were building a life with. Her father had died 2 years ago. Heart attack, sudden and devastating. She'd found his old files while cleaning out his office, legal documents, patents, protections he'd put in place for clients. She'd kept one box of his work, unable to throw away the last pieces of the man who'd always seen her clearly, who'd always known her value, even when she forgot it herself. That box was in the back of their closet. She'd moved it from their old apartment to this penthouse, carrying her father's memory with her, even as she lost pieces of herself. Vivian stood and walked to the closet, pushed past designer dresses and expensive shoes she never wore, found the box buried behind luggage from trips they'd stopped taking together. She pulled it out and sat on the closet floor, surrounded by evidence of wealth. That had never been hers, just loaned to her for playing the right role. Inside the box were legal pads covered in her father's handwriting, client files, patent applications, and at the bottom, a manila envelope with her name written in his careful script, Vivian Reeves, private. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were documents she'd never seen. A letter in her father's handwriting, dated 2 months before he died. My dearest Vivian, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope I had the chance to tell you in person how proud I am of you, how brilliant you are, how much you deserve to be valued for your mind, and not just your support of someone else's dreams. I've watched you disappear into Dominic's shadow, and I've bitten my tongue because you seemed happy, or happy enough. But I've also prepared for the possibility that one day you might need protection from the choices you made when you loved him more than you loved yourself. The attached documents are provisional patents I filed on your behalf 6 years ago, right after you presented at MIT. Your adaptive neural network architecture, your algorithmic frameworks, your innovations, all registered in your name alone. I never told you because I didn't want to insult your marriage or suggest I didn't trust your husband, but as your father and your attorney, I couldn't watch you contribute everything and protect nothing. If you need these someday, use them. If you never need them, then I'm a paranoid old man, and you can laugh at my overprotectiveness. But know this, your work has value independent of who you share it with. Your intelligence deserves credit, and you never, ever need to shrink yourself to fit someone else's vision of who you should be. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I hope you remember who you were before you became who he needed you to be. Always, Dad. Vivian read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she looked at the attached documents. Provisional patents filed with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Her name listed as sole inventor. The dates stamped 6 years earlier, before her wedding, before she'd contributed a single line of code to Crosstech. The algorithms that powered every product Dominic's company sold, the architecture that made Crosstech worth $2 billion, the foundation of his entire empire, all legally, irrevocably hers. Her father had protected her when she wouldn't protect herself. He'd seen what she'd been too in love to see, and he'd given her a weapon she'd never known she possessed. Vivian sat on the closet floor holding patents worth hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe more. She thought about the divorce papers on Dominic's computer, the $50,000 settlement, the 30 days to vacate, his certainty that she'd take it quietly because women like her always did. She thought about Nicole's question, what if she fights? And she thought about Dominic's answer, she won't. Vivian carefully placed the documents back in the envelope, stood up, walked out of the closet. She looked at their bedroom, at the life she'd built that had never actually been hers, and made a decision. She pulled out her phone and searched for patent attorneys in Seattle. Found a name she recognized from her father's old files, Marcus Okafor. Her father had mentioned him several times as one of the sharpest IP lawyers in the Pacific Northwest. She composed an email, her fingers steady despite everything. Mr. Okafor, my name is Vivian Reeves. You worked with my father, James Reeves, before he passed. I have a complex intellectual property situation that requires immediate consultation. My father filed provisional patents on my behalf several years ago. The technology covered by those patents is currently being used commercially without licensing agreement or compensation. I need to understand my options. I can meet at your earliest availability. This is time sensitive. She hit send before she could second guess herself. Then she forwarded the patents, her father's letter, everything. The reply came within 20 minutes. Ms. Reeves, I remember your father fondly. I'm very sorry for your loss. I've reviewed the documents you sent. We need to meet immediately. I have availability tomorrow morning at 9. My office is in Pioneer Square. This is potentially a significant case. Please bring any documentation you have regarding the commercial use of your patented technology. Vivian confirmed the meeting. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and waited for her husband to come home from wherever he really was. He arrived after midnight, trying to be quiet, not wanting to wake her. She was still sitting in the dark bedroom, wide awake, changed in ways he wouldn't notice until it was far too late. He seemed surprised to see her awake. I thought you'd be asleep. The meeting ran really late. How was it? She kept her voice neutral, curious, productive, really productive. We might have a major partnership deal coming together. He started getting ready for bed, his movements familiar and strange at the same time. How was your day? Enlightening. I figured some things out. Yeah? What kind of things? Important things. But I'll tell you about it later, when the timing's right. He didn't press, didn't ask, just kissed her forehead like she was a child being dismissed and climbed into bed. Within minutes, he was asleep, comfortable and certain of his world, having no idea that the foundation he'd built his empire on was about to be pulled out from under him. Vivian lay awake until dawn, planning her exit with the same precision she used to apply to code architecture. Every decision mapped out, every consequence considered, every move calculated for maximum impact. At 8:30 the next morning, while Dominic was in his home gym, Vivian left the penthouse with a single bag. Inside were her father's documents, her old laptop, photos from before her marriage, and 3 changes of clothes. Everything else she left behind. The jewelry, the designer wardrobe, the expensive accessories, none of it was hers. It all belonged to Mrs. Dominic Cross, and that woman was about to cease to exist. She took a rideshare to Pioneer Square and walked into Marcus Okafor's office at exactly 9 o'clock. He was a tall man in his 50s with silver threading through his close-cropped hair and eyes that missed nothing. He stood when she entered and shook her hand with a grip that communicated both sympathy and steel. Ms. Reeves, Thank you for coming. Please, sit down. I've spent the last 12 hours reviewing your case, and I need to be direct with you. This is potentially one of the most significant intellectual property cases I've seen in my 20-year career. Vivian sat, her bag on her lap like a shield. Tell me, the patents your father filed are solid, filed before your marriage, listing you as sole inventor, covering the core algorithmic architecture that appears to power Crosstech's entire product suite. He pulled up documents on his computer screen and turned it so she could see. I've reviewed Crosstech's public technical documentation, their patent filings, their product descriptions. Every single piece of technology they've commercialized traces back to your original work. So what does that mean? Vivian's heart was pounding, but her voice stayed steady. It means your husband has been using your patented technology commercially for 5 years without a licensing agreement. That's patent infringement. You're entitled to damages based on their revenue, injunctive relief to stop them from using your technology, and ongoing royalties if you choose to license it to them moving forward. How much are we talking about? Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. Crosstech's most recent valuation was $2 billion. Their revenue last year was $350 million. Conservative estimate, you're looking at back damages in the range of $200 to $500 million, plus future royalties or a licensing buyout that could be worth significantly more. The number was so large, it didn't feel real. Vivian tried to process it, to make it mean something concrete. There's another option. Marcus continued. You could demand they cease use of your technology entirely. An injunction that would effectively shut down their operations until they either license from you or rebuild their entire platform from scratch, which would take years and cost them everything. Before we continue with what Vivian did next, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better, if you've ever walked away from comfort because staying meant losing yourself, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories. Because what happens next will restore your faith in the power of choosing yourself. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to choose between security and self-respect? I read every single one because your stories matter. Now, let's get back to how Vivian dismantled a billionaire's empire without lifting a finger. Vivian sat across from Marcus Okafor, processing information that was rearranging her entire understanding of her marriage, her value, her future. What would you recommend? She asked. Marcus studied her for a long moment. That depends on what you want. Do you want maximum financial compensation? Do you want to destroy his company? Do you want him to publicly acknowledge what you contributed? Do you want all of it? Vivian thought about Dominic sleeping peacefully last night, comfortable, in his certainty that she'd accept whatever scraps he offered. She thought about Nicole asking what if she fights. She thought about her father protecting her even after death. I want him to understand that underestimating me was the most expensive mistake of his life. Marcus smiled, sharp and approving. Then here's what we do. We send a formal letter to Crosstech's legal department outlining your patent ownership and demanding immediate licensing negotiation. We give them 30 days to respond. If they come to the table in good faith, we negotiate a settlement that includes back damages, ongoing royalties, and public acknowledgement of your contributions. If they refuse or try to intimidate you into backing down, we file a federal lawsuit for patent infringement and ask for injunctive relief. We make it so public, so devastating, that every tech reporter in the country covers it. And if they try to claim the patents are invalid, that my contributions were part of the marriage and therefore community property, the patents were filed before your marriage. Your father was meticulous about documentation, and you have emails, documents, proof that you created this technology independently before you ever contributed it to Crosstech. They can try to fight, but they'll lose. The question is, how much damage they're willing to sustain before they accept that. Vivian opened her bag and pulled out her laptop. I have something else. I've been working on an improved version of the original algorithm. New architecture, better performance, more applications. If they refuse to license my original work, I can offer it to their competitors. Or start my own company. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. You've been developing new technology? I never stopped being a software architect. I just stopped letting anyone see it. She opened her laptop and showed him the code she'd been writing late at night when Dominic was traveling. When he was with Nicole, when she couldn't sleep because something inside her was screaming that she'd lost herself. Marcus reviewed her work with the careful attention of someone who understood exactly what he was looking at. Ms. Reeves, this is extraordinary. If you launch a competing product using this new architecture, Crosstech won't just lose the lawsuit, they'll lose their market position entirely. Good. Vivian closed the laptop. Let's send the letter. They spent the next 3 hours crafting a legal demand that was precise, professional, and devastating in its implications. Marcus would send it via certified mail and email to Crosstech's general counsel, to Dominic personally, and to the board of directors. 30 days to respond. 30 days for Dominic to realize his wife wasn't the person he thought she was. Where are you staying? Marcus asked as they concluded the meeting. Do you have somewhere safe? Vivian hesitated. I left this morning with one bag. I haven't figured that part out yet. Marcus wrote down an address. My sister runs a women's shelter and transitional housing program. It's not for domestic violence exclusively. It's for women rebuilding their lives from difficult situations. She'll have a private room available. Stay there until you figure out your next move. Vivian took the address, overwhelmed by kindness from a man who'd known her father, who saw her value when her own husband didn't. Thank you. Her voice broke slightly. For everything. Your father was one of the best men I ever knew. He'd want you protected. And for what it's worth, I think you're about to show the entire tech industry what happens when brilliant women stop shrinking themselves for men who never deserved them in the first place. Vivian left Marcus's office and took a rideshare to the address he'd provided. The shelter was in a converted brick building in the Central District, warm and clean and full of women with familiar stories. Women who'd left situations that were slowly killing them. Women who were rebuilding from nothing. She was assigned a small private room with a twin bed, a desk, and a window overlooking a community garden. It was smaller than her walk-in closet had been. It felt like freedom. That night, she lay in the unfamiliar bed and called the one person who'd never stopped believing in her. Iris Chen, her college roommate from MIT, the friend she'd slowly lost touch with because Dominic had always been too busy for couple. Ease dinners because Vivian had been too embarrassed to admit how small her life had become. The phone rang 3 times before Iris answered, her voice surprised and delighted. Vivian Reeves, I was starting to think you'd been abducted by aliens or joined a cult. Both, kind of. Vivian laughed, and it felt strange, like using muscles she'd forgotten she had. I left Dominic. I'm in a transitional shelter. I have $2,000 to my name and a patent lawsuit that's going to destroy his company. And I need my best friend back. Silence on the line. Then Iris's voice, thick with emotion. Baby girl, I've been waiting 5 years for you to remember who you are. Tell me everything. They talked until 2 in the morning. Vivian told her everything. The affair, the divorce plans, her father's patents, the lawsuit, the new algorithm she'd been developing. Iris listened, asked sharp questions, and when Vivian finally stopped talking, said exactly what she needed to hear. He's terrified right now. He just doesn't know it yet. But when that legal letter arrives, when he realizes you're not the woman he married, that you're the woman you were before he convinced you to be smaller, he's going to panic, and I'm going to be there to watch you take back everything he stole. What if I can't do this? What if he's right and I'm too outdated, too disconnected? Then you figure it out. You learn. You adapt. That's what you've always done. But Viv, listen to me. You built the foundation of a $2 billion company. You're not outdated. You're not irrelevant. You're the most dangerous person in his world right now because you finally know your worth. The 30 days passed in a strange blur. Vivian spent her mornings at the shelter, helping other women navigate legal systems and job applications. She spent her afternoons in coffee shops, refining her new algorithm. She spent her evenings attending tech meetups, reconnecting with her old industry, remembering what it felt like to be Vivian Reeves instead of Mrs. Dominic Cross. People remembered her. Former colleagues welcomed her back with enthusiasm. A small startup offered her a consulting contract, $5,000 for 3 weeks of work reviewing their AI architecture. She took it. The work was challenging and satisfying in ways she'd forgotten work could be. On day 28, Marcus called. They responded, "You're going to want to sit down for this." Vivian was in a coffee shop in Capitol Hill. She sat. "Tell me." "They're denying everything, claiming your patents are invalid, arguing that any contributions you made were part of the marital partnership and therefore community property. They're threatening to countersue for harassment and demanding you cease and desist from making defamatory claims about Mr. Cross and Cross Tech Industries." Vivian felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. "They don't believe I'll actually fight." "Exactly. They think this is a bluff. They think you'll back down when faced with their legal team and their resources." Marcus paused. "So the question is, do you want to show them how catastrophically wrong they are? File the lawsuit, all of it. Patent infringement, damages, injunctive relief. And Marcus, make it public. I want every tech reporter, every business journalist, every person who ever wrote about Dominic Cross's brilliant innovations to know the truth. Consider it done." The lawsuit was filed in United States District Court for the Western District of Washington on a Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, every major tech publication had the story. TechCrunch's headline read, "Software architect sues ex-husband's $1 billion company for patent infringement, claims he built empire on her code." Wired wrote, "Did CrossTech CEO Dominic Cross steal his wife's algorithms?" The Verge led with, "Vivian Reeves versus CrossTech Industries, the divorce case that could reshape Silicon Valley IP law." By Friday evening, CrossTech's stock had dropped 18%. By Monday morning, it was down 32%. Investors were panicking. The board was demanding explanations. And Dominic Cross was finally understanding that his ex-wife was not going to disappear quietly. Vivian's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, speaking invitations, reporters wanting her side of the story. She declined most of them. But when Bloomberg Technology called, she agreed to one interview. She sat across from the reporter in a studio in downtown Seattle, calm and professional, in a simple black blazer she'd bought at a thrift store. The reporter, a woman named Sandra Kim, asked the questions everyone wanted answered. "Ms. Reeves, your ex-husband claims that any contributions you made to Cross Tech were minimal and don't rise to the level of ownership or compensation. How do you respond?" Vivian looked directly at the camera. "I respond with documented evidence. Patents filed in my name before my marriage. Code repositories showing my authorship. Technical documentation proving that every product CrossTech sells is built on architecture I created. I don't need to argue about my contributions. The evidence speaks for itself. What do you want from this lawsuit?" "What I've always wanted. Credit for my work. Fair compensation for technology that's generated hundreds of millions in revenue. And for the truth to matter more than his PR strategy. Your ex-husband has suggested that this lawsuit is motivated by anger over your divorce. Is there truth to that?" Vivian smiled, cold and precise. "I'm not angry. I'm done being invisible. There's a difference. Anger is emotional. This is business. He built a company on my intellectual property without a licensing agreement. That's not a personal grievance. That's patent infringement." The interview aired that evening and went viral within hours. Clips circulated on social media. Legal experts weighed in supporting her case. Women in tech rallied around her with a hashtag, "I stand with Vivian." The shelter where Vivian was staying became overwhelmed with donations. Women sent money, offers of employment, messages of support. One email came from a venture capitalist named Sarah Weinstein. "Miss Reeves, I've been following your case with great interest. I've also reviewed the technical specifications you filed with your patent lawsuit. Your work is extraordinary. If you're interested in launching your own company using your new algorithm architecture, I'd like to discuss funding. We're talking Series A investment, 8 to 10 million to start. You'd maintain majority ownership and full creative control. Let's talk." Vivian sat in her small room at the shelter reading the email over and over, trying to make it real. A week ago, she'd had $2,000 and no plan. Now, a major VC was offering to fund her own company. She called Iris. Read me that email again, Iris demanded. And then read it one more time, because I want to make sure I'm not hallucinating. Vivian read it 3 times. Is this real? Can this actually be happening? Baby girl, this is what happens when you stop hiding your brilliance. You start a company. You hire me as your chief technology officer because my cybersecurity expertise combined with your AI architecture will be unstoppable. And you show every woman who's ever been told she's nothing without some man that we're everything without them. 2 weeks later, Vivian signed a term sheet with Sarah Weinstein's firm, Reeves AI Solutions, Incorporated, $10 million in series of funding. Vivian owned 60%. Her mission statement was simple: ethical AI architecture built by women, for everyone. She hired Iris as CTO, brought on 3 other women engineers she'd known from MIT, rented a small office space in Pioneer Square, started building technology that would compete directly with Crosstech's products, but better, faster, more transparent. Her first client was a healthcare company, one of Crosstech's former partners who'd grown frustrated with Dominic's leadership. They signed a $3 million contract for AI diagnostic tools using Vivian's new architecture. Her second client was a major e-commerce platform, $2.5 million. By month 3, Reeves AI Solutions had 12 employees and $7 million in revenue. By month 4, Vivian was on the cover of Wired magazine with the headline, "The Woman Who Rebuilt Herself and Rewrote Silicon Valley." And across the city, Dominic Cross's empire was collapsing like a building with structural damage finally succumbing to gravity. Crosstech's stock continued falling. Major clients were jumping ship, switching to competitors or to Vivian's new company. The board called an emergency meeting and voted to remove Dominic as CEO, keeping him on only as an advisory board member with no operational control. His relationship with Nicole Sterling imploded when the affair became public knowledge. She resigned and took a position with a competitor, distancing herself from the scandal as fast as possible. His father, a major shareholder, publicly stated that Dominic had disappointed the family and would be removed from leadership roles in all family business ventures. The patent lawsuit ground forward with the inevitability of a glacier. Crosstech's legal team tried every strategy they could, challenging the patents, arguing community property, claiming Vivian had abandoned her IP rights. Every argument failed. The evidence was too clear, too documented, too irrefutable. On a rainy afternoon in October, 6 months after Vivian had walked out of their penthouse, Marcus Okafor called with news. They want to settle $350 million in total compensation, $200 million in back damages, $150 million for a perpetual licensing agreement, plus a public statement acknowledging your contributions to Crosstech's foundational technology. They'll issue a press release, update their company history, include your name on all technical patents going forward. Vivian sat in her office at Reeves AI Solutions, looking out at the Seattle skyline. What's the catch? Non-disparagement agreement. You can't talk negatively about Dominic or Crosstech in public, and they want the settlement terms to remain confidential. No. The answer was immediate and certain. Remove the NDA on settlement terms. I want every woman who's ever been told her contributions don't matter to know exactly what my work was worth. Remove the non-disparagement clause. I won't go out of my way to attack him, but I won't be silenced either. If someone asks me about my experience, I'm going to tell the truth. Marcus was quiet for a moment. They're not going to agree to those terms. Then we go to trial. I've built a company worth $200 million in 6 months. I don't need his settlement, but he needs this lawsuit to end before his company completely collapses. Tell them my terms are non-negotiable. 2 days later, Crosstech agreed to every demand. $350 million, full public acknowledgement, no NDA, no non-disparagement clause. The press release went out on a Friday morning. Crosstech Industries acknowledges that its foundational AI architecture was created by Dr. Vivian Reeves, and we are grateful for her pioneering contributions to the field. We have reached an amicable settlement regarding licensing and compensation. The tech press called it the largest patent settlement in Silicon Valley history involving a married couple. Forbes estimated Vivian's total net worth, including her settlement, and her company's valuation, at over $500 million. She was 33 years old. 6 months earlier, she'd had $2,000 and one bag of belongings. But numbers didn't capture what actually mattered. What mattered was standing in her own office, running her own company, solving problems that fascinated her, mentoring young women engineers, building something that was entirely, completely hers. What mattered was remembering who she'd been before she disappeared into someone else's shadow. A week after the settlement was finalized, Vivian received an email that she almost deleted without reading. The subject line was simple: "Can we talk?" The sender was Dominic Cross. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. "Vivian, I know I have no right to ask for your time. I know I destroyed everything good in my life through my own arrogance and cruelty. But if you're willing, I'd like to meet. Just once. Just to say things I should have said a year ago. No lawyers, no agenda, just a conversation. I understand if your answer is no. I deserve that. But I'm asking anyway. Dominic." She should delete it, should ignore him completely. But something made her respond. One conversation, public place. Next Tuesday, 3 p.m., Zeitgeist Coffee in Pioneer Square. 30 minutes. His response came within minutes. "Thank you." On Tuesday afternoon, Vivian arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. She wore jeans and a sweater, her hair natural, no makeup, no performance. Just herself. Dominic arrived exactly on time. She almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit was gone, replaced with jeans and a jacket. He looked tired, humbled, smaller somehow. He sat down across from her, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Thank you for meeting me." His voice was quiet, lacking the confidence she remembered. "You have 28 minutes. Say what you need to say." "I'm sorry." The words came out rough, like they hurt. "I'm so deeply, genuinely sorry for everything I did to you. For taking credit for your work. For making you invisible. For the affair. For planning to discard you like you were disposable. For every moment I made you feel small so I could feel bigger." Vivian watched him, waiting. "I've been in therapy 3 times a week since you left, trying to understand how I became someone capable of treating you that way. And the truth is, I always had it in me. The arrogance, the entitlement, the belief that I deserved more than I'd earned. You didn't make me that person. I was that person. You just made me better temporarily. And when you stopped performing the role I'd assigned you, I revealed who I actually was. What do you want from me, Dominic? Forgiveness? Absolution? Nothing. I don't deserve anything from you. I just wanted you to hear me say that you were right about everything. I couldn't survive without you. Not the way that matters. I lost my company, my reputation, my family's respect, and I deserved to lose all of it. Because I had something real, someone extraordinary, and I treated it like it had no value." Vivian took a sip of her coffee, giving herself time to feel her own response. "I forgave you months ago, not because you deserved it, but because holding on to anger was taking up space I needed for building my own life. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean I forget what you're capable of. I know. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking if you can believe that I've learned something from this, that destroying us taught me about the cost of taking people for granted. I hope you did learn. I genuinely hope you become someone who sees people's value instead of just their usefulness. But that growth is for your sake, not mine. I don't need you to be better. I just needed you to get out of my way so I could remember who I was before you." She stood to leave. Dominic stood too, hesitating. "For what it's worth, I've followed your company. What you've built is extraordinary. Everything I knew you were capable of and never acknowledged. You didn't just survive without me. You became the person you were always supposed to be." Vivian looked at him, this man she'd loved, this stranger who'd almost destroyed her, and felt nothing but distant compassion for someone still figuring out how to live with his choices. "Goodbye, Dominic. I hope you find peace. I hope you learn to value people before you lose them. But mostly, I hope you understand that this conversation isn't closure for me. I closed that door months ago. This was just you finally catching up." She walked out of the coffee shop into Seattle sunshine, feeling lighter than she had in years. 1 year after leaving her marriage, Vivian Reeves stood on stage at the MIT Technology Conference. The same stage where she'd presented her original algorithm 7 years earlier. But everything else had changed. She was the keynote speaker. Her company, Reeves AI Solutions, was valued at $800 million. She employed 240 people, 70% of them women. She'd launched a foundation called Code Her Future that taught girls from underserved communities advanced programming and AI development. She looked out at the audience and saw young women in the front rows, leaning forward, taking notes, seeing themselves in her story. 7 years ago, I stood on this stage and presented work I was proud of, work I knew had value. Then I spent 5 years forgetting that value because someone convinced me that my contributions didn't matter as much as my support of his vision. Her voice was steady, clear, powerful. I became invisible in my own life. I accommodated myself into non-existence. And when I finally remembered who I was, I had $2,000 and the clothes in a single bag. She paused, letting that sink in. Today, I run a company that's changing how AI serves healthcare, education, and social justice. I employ brilliant people who are building technology that actually matters. And I do it all while crediting every single person who contributes, because I know what it feels like to have your work stolen and your value erased. The audience applauded, but she held up a hand. Here's what I need you to understand. Your worth is not determined by who recognizes it. Your contributions have value whether or not someone powerful acknowledges them. And the person who underestimates you will always be the one who loses in the end. She shared her story, the marriage, the betrayal, the patents her father had filed, the lawsuit, the settlement. She shared the moments of terror when she didn't know if she could survive. And she shared the moments of triumph when she proved to herself that she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of women approached her. Some were in situations similar to what hers had been. Some were fighting to be recognized in male-dominated fields. Some were just starting out and needed to hear that their voices mattered. One young woman, maybe 23, waited until everyone else had left. I'm in a relationship with someone who keeps telling me my work isn't as important as his, that I should support his career first and figure out mine later. Your story made me realize I've been disappearing. Vivian took her hands, seeing her younger self reflected back, then stopped disappearing. Protect your work, document your contributions, and if he can't celebrate your success as much as his own, he's not your partner. He's your obstacle. Choose yourself. Always choose yourself. The young woman left with tears in her eyes and determination in her spine. So, here's the moral of this story. Here's what I need you to take with you. Your worth exists independent of anyone else's recognition. Vivian was always brilliant, always valuable. She just forgot temporarily when someone she loved convinced her that her value came from serving his needs. Protect your contributions. Document your work. Know your worth in concrete, legal, irrefutable terms. Her father saved her by filing those patents. You can save yourself by protecting what you create. Walking away is not failure. Staying in situations that require you to erase yourself, that's the real failure. Vivian lost everything material when she left. She gained everything that actually mattered. The person who underestimates you is always the one who loses. Dominic thought Vivian couldn't survive without him. He was catastrophically wrong. His empire collapsed. Hers is still growing. And finally, build something that's yours, truly, completely, irrevocably yours. Something no one can take away, no one can claim credit for, no one can use to control you. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own power, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories and turn on notifications. Every single week, I bring you narratives about real people facing impossible choices and discovering they're stronger than anyone told them they could be. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, in women who rebuild themselves, in justice that comes from choosing yourself over comfort. And comment below. Tell me your story. What did someone say you couldn't do that you're going to prove them wrong about? What are you building that's truly yours? What are you walking away from because staying means disappearing? Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been told they're nothing without someone else. Someone who's forgotten their own worth. You might just change their life. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Your contributions have value. And you are capable of more than anyone who's ever underestimated you will ever understand. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing yourself. I'm Cedar Light, and I'll see you in the next story.